I'm Caroline Letterman of Amherst Neighbors, board president, and we're so glad that you've joined us today for our first fall event. We're going to start off with a wonderful slideshow of Amherst Neighbors and then move into some inspiring music with the Amherst Area Gospel Choir, in addition to our great speakers, Pat Romney, Joe Comerford, and Mindy Dom. We sure are glad you're here today. All right, so we're going to begin, and I'm sorry, I'm a little befuddled because I had to change computers. You all can hear me now?
Yes.
Perfectly,
Right.
perfectly.
All right, awesome. First of all, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping and a lot of recognition for people who have done amazing things to make this day happen. And first and foremost, we must thank the UMass team of COST. COST stands for Community Outreach Student Team, and we have 2 COST members who are running this Zoom for us today. And they have done a lot of work to get us here. Alexandra Camero Bejarano and Ben Fenelon, and they've done a stellar job, and our program today will be richer and run much more smoothly today thanks to them. What you need to know is that with the assistance of this excellent team, we will be dropping various documents into the chat at times. For those of you who don't know how to use the chat, it's down at the bottom of your screen. If you click on the word that says right in the center of the screen, all the way at the bottom, click on chat, and you will see different links that show up to the right of your screen. And you can literally click on those links and you will get different documents. You will be able to see different documents, and you'll be able to see our donate button, which you can also click on. We would be ever so grateful at some point today or sometime, if you are able, that you would donate to Amherst Neighbors. First and foremost, we're going to open up this event with some terrific music. The Amherst Area Gospel Choir was formed in 2009 under the direction of Jacqueline Wallace, who is also a clinical social worker and therapist here in the Valley. Recently, I did read a tweet from Mindy Dom just the other day stating that Jackie is presently the Hampshire County District 3 nominee for Black Excellence on the Hill, an award honoring Black leadership across Massachusetts. So congratulations, Jackie. Jackie's team today includes Maritha Wallace, the assistant director, and Heather Lord, the rehearsal pianist. The Amherst Area Gospel Choir is a nonprofit organization that serves the community with singing and financial blessings. They continue the tradition that Dr. Horace Clarence Boyer originated in this region. His mission was to preserve and contribute to the legacy of Black spiritual music that grew out of enslaved people's ancestry in Africa and the Black church. Gospel music is not an outgrowth of slavery. This music helped to continue the sense of rhythm, connectedness, and encouragement that developed a power to survive even in enslavement. This tradition of gospel music singing helped to preserve people's lives, to transmit secret messages, to enhance group connection, to promote worship to something larger than themselves or anyone else, and served as a tool for transmitting culture and literacy. So we are so pleased that they can join us today, the Amherst Area Gospel Choir. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. What a perfect way to start this event today, with the connection and the beauty of what your singing has brought to us today. Thank you all for being here. All right. As you all know, we really would have preferred to do this event in person. We did have a wonderful day planned at the Red Barn with food and additional live music, but COVID had other plans for all of us, both in March 2020 and now for the second time. But thankfully, technology has allowed us all to be here together today. So, Amherst Neighbors, we are an organization of Amherst and Pelham residents connecting with one another through social programs and services in order to age well in community. We have a lot of people to thank today for getting us this far, and we would first like to thank our co-sponsors for today, which include the Council on Aging of Pelham, led by Tracy Ospar, and the Council of on Aging of Amherst, led by Patricia Rector. And I would like to acknowledge our collaborative relationship that we've had with the Amherst Senior Center since our beginning, and particularly thank you to Mary Beth Agulowitz for supporting us wholeheartedly throughout her time there. She has joined the Northwestern DA's office as the Chief of the Elders and Persons with Disabilities Unit. We were very sorry to see her go from the Senior Center, but we do know she is already doing excellent work in her new position. And we need to acknowledge anytime you have this kind of event, it takes a lot of planning. And I want to thank the members of our board who planned this event today, including Linda Terry, our I would say fearless leader. I don't know if she had any fear, but she certainly was committed, and she has the expertise, and her outreach today made it so that all of you could be here with us. Also, thank you to Carly Tardikoff and Linda Spink and myself on the planning committee. All right. It is very important that we make sure to, although you might not get to see them individually on screen today, you did see a lovely picture of our board members on our slideshow. And I certainly want to introduce one of the hardest working, all volunteer, nonprofit boards anywhere on the planet. And those beautiful people are Deborah Bridges, Ben Harrington, Sandy Roth, Ann Sklar, Linda Spink, Larry Steinhauser, Carly Tardikoff, Linda Terry, and Liz Welsh. Truly, we would not be here today without this amazing group of people, so thank you all very much. In addition, we are happy to announce that we have hired our one and only paid staff person, Joanna Walter, as our administrative assistant. She started just last week, and we have already breathed a collective sigh of relief, as she knows way more about technology and organizing than many of us on the board do. So she has been a great gift so far, and many of you will get to speak with her if you email or call us. She's the one you'll be talking to most often, and you will really be glad to speak with her. Before we introduce our first speaker, I would like to do one thing. I'd like to give a toast. I just learned recently, thanks to Linda Terry, that October 1st was the United Nations International Day of Older Persons, which was begun in 1990. So in the spirit of that, I would like to raise a glass to older people everywhere, and specifically to those involved presently with Amherst Neighbors. Here's to all that we as the Amherst Neighbors have accomplished together since our official launch in March of 2020. Here's to the programs we've offered over Zoom, and to the services we've provided, and to the connections we've made to one another. Here's to our members, our board members, our call managers, our volunteers, committee members, and community partners, and all of you who are creating a community in which we can age well together. We literally couldn't have done it without you all. If you happen to have a glass around with you, please raise it and say cheers and thank you. I'm going to take a little sip because my throat needs that as well. One quick, just to know, we will do a Q&A. If you want to ask a question, you can put it in the chat. We will choose one or two to answer now of your questions, and we promise to email your other responses in the future. So without further ado, I would like to recognize our first speaker, Dr. Patricia Romney, who received her PhD from the City University of New York, where she won the Bernard R. Ackerman Award for Outstanding Scholarship in Graduate Psychology. She completed her internship in consultation and education at the Yale University School of Medicine and did postgraduate study at the College of Executive Coaching. For 20 years, she taught at the college level, achieving tenure at Hampshire College, where she taught for 10 years. Subsequently, she held a 10-year appointment as visiting associate professor of psychology and education at Mount Holyoke College. The courses she taught included the psychology of oppression, the psychology of racism, and the social psychology of organizations. Always the active scholar, Dr. Romney has authored over 20 articles and papers, and most recently, her book, We Were There, The Third World Women's Alliance and the Second Wave of Feminism, was published by the Feminist Press in October 2021, and I can tell you it is excellent. It is so incredibly well written and researched and important reading, and you don't have to trust me. Angela Davis even has wonderful things to say about this book, so I highly recommend it. For the past 30 years, Pat has been engaged in dialogue work, large-scale diversity initiatives, leadership development, and team building, as well as professional coaching of individual faculty, administrators in academia. She also joined the board of Amherst Neighbors for 2 years and co-chaired our fundraising committee. Presently, Dr. Romney spends her time as a geropsychologist. That is, she is a family therapist who works with elders who wish to live a more fulfilled and joyful life. But most importantly, Pat is just an all-around amazing human being. And boy, Pat, are we glad you're here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline, for that generous and gracious introduction. You all know that I love Amherst Neighbors, and I'm so proud and happy to be with you today. So the title of my remarks today is Aging Well, the Importance of Community and Equity. Have you ever wondered how long you'll live? I have. Being 77 years old, which according to the CDC is the average life expectancy of a US citizen, kind of makes me wonder, right? More pointedly, the average life expectancy in the United States is 72 for non-Hispanic Blacks. So I've passed my expected expiration date, so to speak. Still makes me a little nervous, if you know what I mean. How much time have I got, I wonder? So I decided to do my own actuarial calculations. It's a complicated formula, so hang with me. I thought to myself, I'm healthier than my mom was at my age, and not quite as healthy as my father was at my age. So I'll average the age of my parents and take a guess about how long I'm going to live. My mother died at age 88. My father lived to be 104. So I took an average and arrived at age 96. Not bad, I thought. Never mind that only 25% of the variation in human lifespan is determined by genetics. When I tell people my father lived to be 104, they say, wow, you have great genes. That's good enough for me. I know, very, very scientific. So there you have it, I thought. 96 is good. But my good friend and founding board member, Teresa Ahrens, reminded me it's not just how long we live, but how well we live. I thought, yeah, good. Yeah, a new wrinkle, though. Thinking about living long and living well myself and working with elders and their families led me to do some deep reading over the last year, and I'd like to share some of what I learned. The first book that I explored, the first program that I explored was the Blue Zones. You know, those regions identified by Dan Buttner, those regions across the world that have the greatest number of centenarians. Blue Zones places are Okinawa, Japan, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Sardinia in Italy, Icaria in Greece, and a whole community of Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, California. The researchers identified 9 key lifestyle variables that contribute to longevity. Moderate, regular physical exercise, life purpose, stress reduction, moderate calorie intake, a plant-based diet, moderate alcohol intake, especially wine, engagement in spirituality or religion, engagement in family life, and engagement in social life. So I'm still calculating. I figured I'm good with 4.5 of those, and I'm actively in pursuit of 4 others. The 0.5 I'm attributing to the fact that I really don't like wine. And the only wine I can stomach at all is Manischewitz, a love that I share with Gary Tartikoff. According to the Blue Zones, the most important variable is food. Good, healthy, wholesome, mostly beans, plant-based food. But Buttner and his colleagues remind us that it all works together. I was impressed by that. So I signed up for their free newsletter. I bought the Blue Zone cookbook, co-titled 100 Recipes to Live to 100. Why settle for 96? Then I read Keep Sharp, Build a Better Brain at Any Age by Sanjay Gupta, the neurosurgeon and CNN commentator, who I'm not sure why turned down Barack Obama's invitation to be Surgeon General, but nonetheless, Sanjay's given us some good advice. His book isn't about aging per se, it's about putting our brain first And according to Sanjay, if we put our brain first, all of the rest will follow. And that's important for us, for those of us who think about dementia and think about Alzheimer's. Blue zones have 5 areas where people are successful. Keep Sharp has 5 pillars of brain health. The first is move. Exercise is like a first aid kit for the damaged brain cells. 150 minutes per week is what Sanjay recommends. Number 2, discover. Engage with a new hobby, learn a new language, volunteer for Amherst neighbors, travel. 3, relax. Put your feet up, sleep, keep stress at a distance. 4, nourish ourselves, including eating nuts and seeds and whole foods to help minimize cognitive decline. And 5, connect. Connect with others in face-to-face situations rather than complete a crossword puzzle alone in your home. Connect, Sanjay also said, is about having a diverse social network, because this has been found to improve your brain plasticity and help preserve your cognitive abilities. So I hope you're keeping count on these recommendations. I've got 3 of them down and pushing for those other 2. Now I'd like to tell you a little bit about my favorite nonfiction book that relates to aging. It's a book called Together: Loneliness, Health, and What Happens When We Find Connection. How many of you have read that book? I see a show of hands, or just press your little hand icon at the bottom of your screen. I'm really curious to see how many of you. I'm going to change my view so I can see how many of you have read that book. Okay. I hope a few more will read it after this, after my remarks today, because I think it's the most important of the 3. Yay, Christine. I saw that hand. Through research, personal story, and clinical experience, Murthy demonstrates that we are hardwired for connection. People with strong social relationships are 50% less likely to die prematurely than people with weak social relationships. Now get this, the impact, according to, I didn't mention that Vivek Murthy, who wrote Together, is our current Surgeon General and was our Surgeon General under Barack Obama. He writes that the impact of lacking social connection is greater than the risk associated with obesity, excess alcohol consumption, or lack of exercise. I want to say that again, because we in Amherst and Pelham are so good about thinking about exercise and eating. His research and the research of other researchers who he writes about is that the lack of social connection is a greater risk to our longevity than obesity, alcohol consumption, or lack of exercise. Powerful. The human need for social connection is more than a simple feeling or convenience. It's a biological and social imperative rooted in thousands of years of human evolution. Loneliness can kill, Murthy tells us, but connection can heal. So being connected can help us live longer, and this has everything to do with living well. Murthy has 3 circles of connections that he thinks we need to pay attention to. One's that inner circle of intimate relations, and those aren't just romantic relations, which is really important for those of us who are singles. Intimate relations means close friends and confidants, our besties, the people with whom we can share our heart and soul. The middle circle of connection, Murthy says, is about occasional companions, and it's just as vital. It's a circle in which you may not know your friend's deepest secrets, but you enjoy it when your lives intersect. Middle circle friends provide a vital buffer against relational loneliness. And then he talks about the outer circle of amicable acquaintances, those folks we meet at Stop and Shop or Whole Foods, that we intersect with through civic and social organizations in our workplace, in our neighborhood. Those people help us stave off a kind of collective loneliness. Well, reading Murthy's book, I'm really beginning to think I can make it to 100, right? Because it's relationships that matter. I wonder about you. Most of us can form new middle circle friendships just as we did when we were kids by joining groups. Joining groups can help us reduce stress, repair emotional damage, promote meaning and purpose. So if you haven't joined Amherst Neighbors, make sure you do. There's the group. One important key to high quality connection researchers found is the exchange of help. Imagine high quality connections develop in the exchange of help. And this includes asking for help. Again, I hear Amherst Neighbors. So when it comes to living long and living well, for Blue Zones, it's food. For Gupta, it's exercise. At Murthy tells us strong relationships are what matters most. Well, I said I was going to talk to you about the importance of community and equity. Where does that fit in? When I look at our community in Amherst and Pelham and reflect on some things I've observed in the last couple of years, particularly during the pandemic, a few experiences came to mind. One, in the depths of the pandemic, I received an email from Isolda Ortega asking me to sign on to a letter that she had written, which was an appeal to neighbors in Amherst, and it read as follows. We appeal to you, our friends and neighbors, to join us in supporting hard-working families in Amherst, families who are slipping through the safety net. We are in contact with 50 families in Amherst in desperate need of immediate funds to pay for food, toiletries, utilities, phone service, over-the-counter medications, and other basic needs. These neighbors work primarily in the service industry, as in restaurants and hospitality, and they've been out of work for weeks. I was troubled by that situation. I immediately signed on to help, but what troubled me along with that was the fact that I didn't know who these people were. Not that I had to know their names and where they lived, but I didn't know any people who fell into that category. I had no relationships with people experiencing that level of deprivation. That didn't feel good to me. Another instance, when I was consulting to the Amherst Police Department, just as we were beginning to come out of the pandemic. And I learned for the first time that we have a homeless encampment in Amherst. I don't know how many of you know that we have a homeless encampment in Amherst. I see some no's. For me, that was another piece of ignorance and oblivion. If we are living in Amherst, if they are living in Amherst and sleeping in Amherst, those are our neighbors too, our homeless neighbors. Excuse me while Alexa speaks to me, as she does every day at this time. So those are our friends, our neighbors. Thank goodness Amherst Neighbors is paying attention. A recent presentation from John Hornick, who works on affordable housing in our community, called all of our attention to the need for affordable housing. But we have these homeless people whom we don't even know, and they are our neighbors. The third example I'll give is the food insecurity that exists in colleges today. In my day, and probably many of yours, it was unimaginable that a large group of students in college would not have enough to eat. According to the 2018 Student Food Insecurity Forum at UMass, throughout the United States, college students across the country experience anywhere from 20 to 40% of college students experience some level of food insecurity. What do food insecurity, think UMass students, homeless people, think about that encampment, low-wage earners, those 50 families that I wrote about, what do they have to do with us? I wonder how we can live long and well when those surrounding us are not. How we can be safe when those surrounding us are not safe. For me, it's a huge challenge. I don't want to focus on living to 100 while my neighbor, a homeless person or a student or a wage earner, has no safe and secure place to lay their head or food to feed themselves or their children and families. How about you? Maybe it troubles your heart a little bit. Right? Maybe it touches your conscience or gives you a new call to a sense of purpose or a new way to think about how to build community in Amherst and Pelham. Really, truly equal and fair societies are more prosperous and more harmonious. Our failure to tackle discrimination and to promote equal opportunity hurts individuals and families negatively impacts our society and costs our community. We need to be concerned in our community about livability, productivity, confidence, and safety. Martin Luther King told us a long time ago, in a real sense, all life is interconnected. We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects us all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until all of us are what we ought to be. So in conclusion, my takeaways are this. If we want to live long and prosper, as Spock said, we should eat healthfully, move as much as possible, and tend and befriend one another. And when I say one another, make sure that your neighbors are not just people that look like you. Make sure that our neighbors are not just people who live the way we live, who live in houses or homes, who have places to live, right? Make sure that your neighbors encompass the racial, linguistic, economic diversity of our entire Pelham-Amherst community. Amherst Neighbors invites you and your neighbors to join with us to create neighbor-to-neighbor connections and empower older adults to maintain socially engaged lives. And I heard Caroline say today, aging well in community. When we started out, we talked about aging in place. I love the expansion, the reframe of aging well in community. The African proverb says, if you want to go fast, walk alone. If you want to go far, walk together. Together, in the creation of connection, we can find the paths to living long and living well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pat. That was so inspiring. And there are, I don't know if anyone has dropped any questions into the chat. Linda Terry, were you going to let us know about that? I think you're on mute, hon.
Unmute, Linda.
Hi, Pat, that was wonderful. Thank you. There is one question in the chat, and I'm going to phrase it. It was more directed around our Amherst Neighbors protocols, but it has to do with the spirit of both that we see ourselves at this stage of life as either receiving services and benefits somehow or other, or giving to other in community. And I'm wondering if you had some thoughts about how do we bring that together, which I think is the heart of your message about that this is both about us and it's what we get need, embrace, and what we also offer and engage with others, and ways to do that.
Well, I think Amherst Neighbors is doing that work, right? That some of us are receiving services and some of us are giving services. And sometimes we can give a service in one area and receive a service in another area. Right? You know, I asked us to think about, you know, we've got a nice sizable group on the call today, on our celebration today. I want us to think about who our neighbors are. One of our primary needs, as Murthy told us, is about connection. Are we connected enough? Do we know who among our neighbors or who on the screen are not connected enough? Connection is the link that gives and gets, right? In connecting, we both receive and give. So that's one thought I have based on some of the books that I was talking about.
Thank you.
All right. So any other question? Anybody have a last minute question they want to drop in the chat for Pat? We'll give that a quick second. You know, Pat, I just, you know, the thing that comes to me so often these days is I feel that we're here on the planet to take care of each other. And that's a lot about that's what I heard you saying here today in many different ways. So we certainly, I'm so glad you were here. It is always a gift to be in your space because you always have something to contribute that is positive and thought-provoking. So thank you for that.
Excuse me?
Yep.
I would like to say something. My name is Dadi Singapore, and I'm on High Street, and I don't know how to do the questions in the chat box.
Great. So go ahead.
I have this family. They're refugees from 20 years ago from the Yugoslavian, and they have been in legal limbo for 20 years. Mm. And I have been with the mother to lawyers, immigration lawyers, and I have had experiences that you wouldn't believe with lawyers. So if anybody out there has an idea for an immigration lawyer to help someone who came here legally, he's now 40 years old. He came here when he was 37. He's 37 now. And so he cannot get legal with this country. And so he has not been able to legally work the entire time he's been here. So anyway, anybody has any ideas about immigration and lawyers, I would certainly appreciate it. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the kind of thing that we need to do, is to step forward and say, you know, I need help. I need information from my friend, my colleague, the person next door. So thank you for bringing that.
Well, and your talk was absolutely so inspiring. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, one more thing to say, Pat, in terms of talking about this notion, the first question of reciprocity, that this is one of the things that we are so aware of at Amherst Neighbors, which is every single person has the ability to both give and to receive. And we had someone just recently who was receiving services from us and then really felt like she wanted to give something back, and she's an artist, and she decided to give a free painting. You saw the pictures on our slideshow, a outdoor plein air exercise in painting overlooking Mount Pollux. It was a beautiful event, and she was very pleased to do it. So, you know, it is, how do we find that reciprocity where people can both give and receive and get what we all need and want? So,
Hi,
Linda, you're on mute, honey.
I unmuted myself. Hi, there are a couple more comments in the chat, and I want to share, and I'm looking at our time schedule, and we're good. So we're okay.
Go for it.
Okay. Sue Lowry offers the PAIR project, PAIR, provides pro bono immigration law services. So I wanted to share that. Okay. And, you know, we can send that to you directly so that you could have it in writing. Okay. And the second from Thomas, please talk more of connections. I feel that's important.
Pat, you're muted.
Unmute, Pat.
He's working on it.
No, unmute more.
The whole system is her.
You unmuted for a second.
There you go.
There we go. Couldn't find the, somehow they shrank down the end. So connections. I use the phrase tend and befriend. And this is a phrase that comes out of the Stone Center at Wellesley, really initiated by a wonderful psychiatrist whose name may come back to me as I'm speaking, Jean Baker Miller, and her work on relational cultural theory. Jean and her fellow researchers at the Stone Center, she's passed away now, coined this phrase, tend and befriend, because they suggest that the mechanism or the response of fight and flight is one of the responses that we have, but it really doesn't take into account the ways in which women often respond to anxiety and stress. And they found in their research that one of the most potent responses to fear, to anxiety, to danger, to threat, rather than fight or flee, was the way in which women tend and befriend. And I think I really take that to heart and offer it to you as we're talking now about connection. How are we tending and befriending? Who are we befriending? Murthy talks about the diversity of our friendship helping to grow our, or rather that was Sanjay Gupta, the plasticity of our brain. Do we only have people, we only befriend people who we know, who grew up with us, who look like us, who speak our language? Or do we tend and befriend others, anyone who's in need? Those connections, again, will enrich us all. So I think, you know, that's a word that we wrote into our, you know, our plans, our goals at Amherst Neighbors when we were, you know, founding the organization. And it continues to be about connection. And some of it is, you know, personal, some of it's face to face, some of it's hand to hand, touch to touch, and some of it's like what we're doing today. Seeing each other, listening to each other, hearing each other, asking questions, getting resources. So that's one thought, tend and befriend and connect.
All right.
We're still working at our system here on Q&A. There are a couple more comments in the chat, and some, I think, just to remind people that we will answer people via email. But one more offering of information from Joe Comerford, wondering about Congressman McGovern's ability to help with the refugee situation. And just wanted to make sure that our neighbor has that information. And we can talk more afterwards.
All right, terrific. Well, Pat, thank you again for being with us. I certainly hope that you'll continue to spend the rest of the time with us here today, but if you can't, we understand. All right, we're gonna move on now to our next speaker, and who happens to be, very conveniently, Joe Comerford. So for those of you, so Joe Comerford represents the Hampshire, Franklin, Worcester District in the state Senate. In Joe's first session as a state senator, she was appointed as Senate Chair of the Joint Committee on Public Health, as well as chairing a Senate working group on COVID-19. Multiple bills that Joe filed were passed into law, including legislation focused on carbon sequestration and soil health, establishing a net zero energy building code, and evaluating the impacts of enrollment on school funding and intersections with the Proposition 2.5 taxation cap. Now, in her second session in the State Senate, Jo has been reappointed as Senate Chair of the Public Health Committee and also chairs a newly formed Joint Committee on COVID-19 and Emergency Preparedness and Management. She also serves on the Massachusetts Food Policy Council, as well as a co-chair of the legislature's Food System Caucus and Higher Education Caucus. Jo has filed over 60 bills this session, including legislation to let spouses be recognized as caregivers by health insurance companies, to establish health equity reviews at all levels of government, to build more affordable housing, to help small-town municipal officials and governments, as well as a bill to allow end-of-life options in Massachusetts. Well, wonderful. Jo, please everyone welcome the hardest working senator in the state of Massachusetts. We are so glad to have you here today.
Oh, what a lovely and really generous welcome. Thank you so much. And let me say, Dr. Romney, if you saw me move my hands during your presentation, I was cutting and pasting all of the links and sending them to my wife, Anne, and saying, I'm listening to Dr. Pat Romney. Oh my goodness. This is what we have to do together. We have to think together the way Pat is urging us to. So thank you. I was profoundly moved by your remarks today. And I'm so happy to be with you all. I've been really looking forward to this. I really just appreciate your tenacity in the face of COVID, muscling through both your work, the kind of mission you're galvanizing, and also this gathering. And let me also just say, I'm so happy to be here with my colleague, the hardest working representative, Mindy Dahm. In addition to the committees that you heard about, I just want you to know a few more of the committees that I currently sit on, and that's because perhaps you'll have questions about them. I was also appointed to the newly formed Joint Committee on Racial Justice, that at my request. I also sit on the Joint Committee on Mental Health and Substance Use, and also the Joint Committee, I'm a member of the Joint Committee on Environment and Natural Resources Administration, and Rep. Dahm is the vice chair of that on the House side. And I love the Amherst Neighbors mission about how community can play an outsized role in helping us all age well and age with dignity in community. It is a model, I think, that, I'm so grateful exists here in our community, and so grateful for your leadership. So thanks to the organizers for today's gathering. Folks asked that I cover really interesting topics spanning from COVID to legislating during COVID to equity, and then of course elder-centered legislation. And I think of all of that within the frame of building back better from the pandemic. This means to me, and I trust that many of us have these values, building back more equitably, creating a commonwealth where everyone can thrive. I'll say that, this is my third year, so I'm in my second term, third year, so the first year of that second term, that legislating during COVID has been both profound and urgent. And one of the things that is the most important pieces, both of this profound time and this urgent time, is the kind of people power that makes the State House run. You may have heard me say this before in remarks and other settings, but I will say that the State House doesn't work unless we make it work. And we, I mean people in local communities, which is why organizations and gatherings like this are so critically needed. Because the State House, I think perfectly fine people go to work in the State House, right? We go to work, we want to help, all of us, I believe that. But it's people telling us the kind of things you want to see done in your name, and then being relentless in your advocacy and strategic in your advocacy, and gathering yourselves in groups like these that really are the most effective engines of change. Everything we've seen done, at least in my time, my brief time in the State House, is because people told us it was the very most important thing to do. So let me just go back to March 2020. I was, again, a relatively new chair in the Joint Committee on Public Health, and I really appreciated Dr. Romney really calling us to think about these social indicators of public health, and we were engaged in committee looking at what makes us well and keeps us well. when we started to hear word of COVID-19, you know, almost coming across the Atlantic toward us. And so I gathered with my House chair, a wonderful guy named John Mahoney, and we held the legislature's first oversight committee meeting on COVID-19. This was March 5th in 2020, so that we could make sure, in fact, urge us to make sure that we were prepared for what was going to hit our shores. And of course, it was already here. And many of us were not surprised at the kind of ravaging impact that COVID has had, inequitable impact. And, you know, one of the things I think we all need to think about in the legislature is the way in which these brutal inequities, mostly across race and ethnicity, but also across class and geography and other kind of identities that can be marginalized, you know, have been long standing in the Commonwealth before COVID got here, but COVID ripped them back so that they were exposed, and they drove the kind of inequities that we saw during the pandemic and continue to see, quite frankly, even as we struggle to emerge into this new normal, this endemic, where we're going to have to manage this new way of being for some time, I believe. And that's the kind of, those are the kind of inequities we immediately saw, right? People of color having unequal access to testing, getting sick disproportionately from COVID, getting sicker and needing hospitalization disproportionately, and then tragically dying disproportionately from the virus. Of course, because of long-standing health inequities that, again, were present before this virus, generationally present before this virus hit us. Another thing that I've been really aware of is the critical underinvestment in local public health. And right now we're a Commonwealth where we have 351 cities and towns and 351 different ways of doing public health. And that means that just by the very nature that communities with some resources and some, you know, acumen, some local officials who are tuned in and able to spend some time here will afford public health protections. Again, those things that keep that do not have these assets will not have the same protections. And that's a piece of work that I'll talk about a little bit later that I've been doing all the way through the pandemic. How do we come out of here with some platform for local public health and the money behind it, frankly, so that we can really build back better? We have to remember that Massachusetts, while we spend over $15 billion annually on healthcare, we spend a fraction on local public health, a fraction. And in fact, the Massachusetts Health Equity Task Force that emerged in the middle, called forward by the legislature, emerged in the middle of COVID, pointed to this inequity as one of the must-dos as we emerge. If we really want racial health equity, if we really want health equity across income, we have to really build a foundation of local public health. So folks asked, you know, what was it like legislating during COVID? And I'll just say that, you know, COVID, while the virus changed every day and was moving so quickly, the legislature had to catch up, quite frankly. We are not a body, we're a deliberative body, and we're not a body that moves as quickly as we needed to initially. And so we set ourselves in the Senate into almost a campaign-like formation. Folks may know that I was an organizer at Move On and at American Friends Service Committee before getting to the legislature. So one of the things that the Senate President asked me to do from my perch at Public Health was organize the Senate, make us ready, get us into shape, if you will. And so I organized a campaign where we had a hub of folks looking at everything from elder care to housing to environment to food security. And then we basically spoked out to the rest of the Senate, and all staff jumped in together to work. It didn't matter what office you were in. And that's how we were able to approach legislating during COVID, so that every staff person had equal access to the kind of resources that the Senate could give, and every senator had equal access to tend to the issues of their people. We also had to figure out how to work more effectively with the administration, the Baker administration. And here again, you know, Rep. Dom knows this beautifully well as well. We had to figure out where our work ended and where the administration's work began. And that really took quite a lot of engagement with both Secretary Sutters and also then Commissioner Monica Burrell, who herself is a champion of health equity. But the legislature managed to work the remote legislating that we needed to do to keep our staff and senators and House members safe. And we weighed in on a number of different critical pieces of legislation, like expanding unemployment, expanding mail-in voting, authorizing remote town meetings, preventing evictions and foreclosures, relief to restaurants, frontline workers. We did a lot of work around food security, both structurally in this thing called the Food Security Infrastructure Grant, and then also just direct support to food banks and local meal sites and pantries, and so much more. And then we came to the end of last session, right? Usually the two-year session ends roughly in July, and everybody goes back to their district and works in their district until the calendar year. But this year we just kept going all the way up till about 4 a.m. on January 6th, 4 a.m. 2021. And the next session, our current session, started 5 hours later at 11 a.m. that same day. And I continue to resonate with what we were doing in Massachusetts and what was happening in our nation's capital, and the jarring dissonance of these two things. So, you know, the legislature at the end of the last session, and as we get into this session, as we emerge from COVID, we did take up other issues, everything from small bridges and culverts to regional transit authority, to a huge economic development package, which is where the healthy soils legislation that was part of the introduction was passed. We passed a bill to change our state flag and seal, a real racial justice imperative, and we passed a bill to create a commission on racial equity and maternal health. Black women have 3 times more likely outcomes of maternal health inequities than white women right now in the Commonwealth. And we tackled climate change, which the governor vetoed. So now I'm going to come into this session very, very quickly. We overrode that governor's veto, and the net zero building code that was talked about in the introduction, that came from Amherst. That was an idea that came from Amherst. Amherst showed us what was possible. And I just want to remind us, and this goes back to the top of what I was saying, the people lead the legislature. So when I put in that net zero building code, again, which Amherst told me to put in, the chair at the time of the Telecommunication Utility and Energy Committee said, oh no, we're not going to do net zero. No one's talking about net zero building. And I said, well, my people are talking about net zero building. And, you know, sure enough, in just one session, which is almost unthinkable for such a huge change, because of people power, the legislature was able to come to believing in net zero as a way forward. And of course, right now we're talking about how to spend the federal money, the ARPA money. I'm focused here a lot on housing and public health. And we're talking about things like redistricting, which is, you know, done every 10 years. So let me just pivot just for a moment, and I'll talk just about a few bills I filed that are particularly relevant, I think, to what we're talking about today. As I thought about what bills to file, and I want to say that I have an amazing team on the Hill, and I think we have my website, and maybe Alexandra, you could put my website in the chat. Oh, here we go, and my Facebook page. This is how to reach us all. I think, so as we built back from COVID coming into this next session, I filed something called the Healing Act. I filed it with Representative Liz Miranda. It's actually asking us to just completely reframe how we think of government. And I'll say it's not a new idea. California, Washington, Minnesota, Wisconsin, they're all doing it. All these states. They're saying, let's look at all of government through a lens of racial health equity. Let's actually ask this question: what would happen in Massachusetts if we looked at every piece of legislation, every major budget priority by asking this question: is this going to help or hurt racial health inequity? And if it helps racial health and equity, right, by healing it, by creating racial equity, we lean in. And if it hurts, we take a step back and we think, why? And what can and should we do? So this would create a health in all policies approach. And I'm particularly proud that the deans of the major schools of public health just endorsed this. And I want to shout out to UMass Amherst that has totally led the way, galvanizing support in the public health space for this legislation. As was mentioned, I also was asked by my great colleague, Senator Brownsberger, who had carried this bill for a long time, to file what's called the end of life options bill. I know many of you have spoken to me about this bill. I think it's a very important bill, and we've worked on it quite a lot to provide the kind of guardrails and protections that I think make this a very important proposal, giving people with terminal illnesses the option of how they are going to live their last days. I passed a piece of legislation called Spouses as Caregivers. Spouses, you may know, are the only folks who don't get remuneration for caring for a loved one at home. They are the only folks. They must do it for free, whereas nieces, cousins, brothers, they would all get paid by the state, by MassHealth, if they provide care. And, you know, I think this is a gross inequity. And when we think about the elder insecurity in Massachusetts, financial insecurity, and think about what your remuneration for care of a loved one in their home would be, it just makes absolute sense. And this is a very growing and important coalition. I also filed a bill called PACE. It's a little bit of a complicated bill, but what I'll say about it is that right now you sort of fall off a fiscal cliff. If you make just a little too much money, you have to spend all your money down to about $542 a month to be able to stay in your home. And this would just simply let you pay a premium, just the premium, just the difference between what the limit is and what you have, to be able to stay in your home rather than having to enter a nursing facility if you didn't want to. So that's about aging at home with dignity and grace. And the last I'll just talk about super briefly is a bill on estate recovery. This bill was also brought by a constituent who told me that, in fact, they had no idea, and I'll say, friends, I didn't either, that people on MassHealth Medicaid services after the age of 55, including doctor or nursing care, prescription drugs, or other services, are at risk for having to pay those fees back. And this was causing a great amount of stress in our community, where people weren't getting the help they needed because they wanted to pass something on to the loved ones in their lives. So I'm fighting this one out. It's a Medicaid estate recovery bill, and we're trying, and Massachusetts, by the way, is doing so much more than the minimum threshold in estate recovery, meaning taking more back, clawing more back from people than any other state. So we're fighting this, and I believe it's going to be another piece of that puzzle about aging together well with dignity. And I'll stop there and look forward to your questions.
All right, Linda Terry, do we have some questions in the chat for Joe?
Well, thank you, Joe. Really caught up in ways of the new information. That was really helpful. Thank you so much. Carly Tartikoff has asked if you would talk about Juneteenth.
Dr. Tartikoff, absolutely. Thank you for asking that. And, you know, Mindy and I were together with Dr. Shabazz, with you, calling us to act, right? So this is part of this racial justice rising moment I think we're in, right? The apex coming out of the brutal murder of George Floyd. The nation was, was shaking with what we should do. And on Facebook, Dr. Shabazz said, hello, you people who represent us, right? This is another one of those instances of people power. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? We have to, here in Massachusetts, recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday. And so it was, and then of course we heard from you, Dr. Tartikoff, we heard from so many other people who said it's time. It's time that we have this here in Massachusetts, a time to reflect on the ravages and of slavery, of enslaved people, and then the triumph, right? The pushing forward to justice and the celebration of freedom, like we witnessed so beautifully in Amherst this summer. Boy, that was the place to be. So we went to work, Mindy and I, along with our colleagues, Bud Williams, Sonia Chen-Diaz, Liz Miranda, so many people, Brendan Crichton on the Senate side too. We formed this coalition very, very quickly. And because of people power, the legislature opened. It just opened in a way that it would not have been possible before, right? It would have ground away like so many other pieces of legislation for far too long, but not this time. And it was because of the prophetic call to action of constituents across the Commonwealth. And in this case, it comes back to Amherst again. Amherst saying, do something, do it now, do it with urgency and the kind of haste that this moment demands.
Thank you. Thanks so much. We have a question now from Pat Romney. What do you need from us to accomplish your goals? And then we'll have one more question after that.
It's a beautiful question. I mean, really, I think Amherst and Pelham just need to be Amherst and Pelham, right? Think just these two examples. And by the way, I could go on of you calling us to act, right? So Dr. Tartikoff talks about Juneteenth, totally how it happened, right? Net zero. When I was campaigning, I went to a meeting in Amherst and sat at a table with people who were saying, hey, look, net zero building, that's how it has to happen. If we're going to build structures going forward, we're doing it here in Amherst, you have to get it done in the state. I knew nothing about net zero, simply absolutely nothing. But constituents made me smarter. So I think it's both coming with the ideas and then the kind of people power urgency that a group like Amherst Neighbors helps galvanize. A force is what's needed really for me to be the best person to do the job, right? Because I work for you. And so if you tell me what's important and then you hold me accountable for doing it, and then you're part of the force that's pushing into the State House like a great tidal wave of justice for people, then it's a pretty sweet relationship.
We're here for sure. And one more question, and then there is another one which I just want to again promise to respond to by email afterwards. From Debbie Weil, I hope I pronounced it right. Is there any attempt to get rid of the windfall employment issue that affects Social Security if you work for the state for part of your career?
Such a good question. We should probably take that offline. It's yes, that is an active conversation, but it's a little bit complicated to go into in great detail. And actually, I'm just going to put I'm going to send Linda my email to you so that folks can email me directly.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great questions.
Wow. Joe, just when you're saying, you are such a breath of fresh air to hear someone say, and I'm going to give you my email so you can contact me directly. Everything that you just said, what I heard in all of it was that you are listening to your constituents. That feels almost unheard of in politics in many other places. So I know I am personally so grateful for you and all that you were doing. So thank you so much for being here today.
Grateful to you all. And to work with Mindy Dom.
Yeah.
Couldn't have a better partner.
Yeah. Which, yes, we will I am about to introduce Mindy Dom. However, one thing I want to make sure to do before I go on is there's one other, there's always so many people to thank, but how Amherst Neighbors got started was so much in part thanks to Liz Welsh and her kitchen table. She gathered a number of people that she knew around her kitchen table and said, let's do this. We need to do this. And so I just really want to say thank you, Liz, as our first board president of Amherst Neighbors. And she'd be the one speaking to you today if it was, if we had had our launch a year ago, it would have been Liz doing this. So I just want to make sure we all acknowledge Liz Welsh for everything she's contributed.
Can I just say something? I know everybody likes to share that particular story, and it's a very sweet story, but the number of people around our collective table has grown so much, and it is so incredible to see all of you on this call. And it's just really heartening. I think we are kind of becoming who we want to be, and it's all exciting. Anyway, so thank you.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Liz. All right. God, I get to do all the fun things, introduce all these amazing human beings. So Mindy Dom is a 23-year resident of Amherst, and she has dedicated her life to addressing the needs of underserved communities, supporting individuals and families, and advocating for fairness and equity. Since 2013 and immediately prior to being sworn in, Mindy served as the executive director of the Amherst Survival Center. She is in her second term as the state representative from the 3rd Hampshire District, which includes the residents and communities of Amherst, Pelham, and the 1st Precinct of Granby presently. This term, she was named vice chair of the Joint Committee on the Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture, and she also sits on the Joint Committees on Higher Education, COVID-19 Oversight, and Revenue. She was also appointed to and served on the Special Committee on the Holyoke Soldiers Home COVID-19 outbreak. She is a co-sponsor of legislation that meets the needs of many older adults, including bills that would allow spouses to be reimbursed as caregivers, Senator Comerford's bill, bills that would provide a family caregiver tax credit, as well as bills that would expand Medicare Savings Program eligibility. Last session, she was also able to secure state funding for the Amherst Senior Center to acquire physical exercise equipment to support their effort to open a physical exercise wellness program. This session, she has introduced a bill to decarbonize our state's public pension funds in an effort to secure retirements for hundreds of thousands of Massachusetts residents and align our financial investments with our climate goals and avoid the economic risks associated with fossil fuel investments. And we at Amherst Neighbors were very grateful for Mindy's time spent speaking with our members and listening to what matters to older residents of Amherst and Pelham. Thanks so much for being here today, Mindy.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I just want to say there's like 72 people on this call, which is extraordinary on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. And I am so glad to be here with all of you. So thank you. And I need to say, first of all, that I can tell you firsthand that Jo is the hardest working state senator in Massachusetts. She's an incredible partner to her House colleagues, which I don't think can be said about every state senator. And like you, I am just so proud that I get to call her my state senator and I get to rely on her as my state senator. We are, I want to say we're lucky, but we're lucky that she chose to run. But we're not lucky that she's our state senator because we put her there. We voted for her. So job well done to both Amherst and Pelham. I'm also, as you know, a great admirer of Amherst Neighbors. And I am so proud to represent you in the Massachusetts House of Representatives. I really appreciated during the slideshow that you used the Mr. Rogers theme as your soundtrack. First of all, I think it really speaks to the intergenerational part of Amherst Neighbors, but it's also, I mean, it's just uplifting. So thank you so much for doing that. And now I'll always associate it actually with Amherst Neighbors in addition to Fred Rogers, which I can't think of a more beautiful association than that. I'm also thinking of the quote that appeared in the slideshow because I need to really sort of think on this, and we'll be taking a lot of time after today's event to do so, that said, it's not so much about living in place, but it's about thriving in motion. And I remember at the Amherst Survival Center, people would often say to us, and I see Judy Glazer was on the call, so maybe she also received this kind of question where people would say, why is it called the Amherst Survival Center and not the Amherst Thrival Center? And there were reasons why it was, but I'm also called to think about what that means in terms of Amherst Neighbors work. and how everything you do is really about helping our community thrive and our elders thrive and our seniors thrive. So again, thank you so much. You know, it's funny to be the third person to speak because both Joe and Dr. Romney's comments have really resonated with me. And I have to also just shout out Dr. Romney and all of her work for students, for equity, and also for elders. But what she said really speaks to me, which is about connecting with each other is the gift that continuously gives and gets. And I'm really thinking about how Amherst Neighbors is such a gift to all of us in our community, to the people who are members of the group, to the people who experience the group, but also for people who just sort of know that the group is there and haven't yet connected about what a gift all of you give us in this community. And I don't want to shout out just one or two particular people because I think what Liz said is really true. The group is just too big, it's the beauty of the group. So thank you. I just want to appreciate that gift. So some of what I'm going to say echoes Senator Comerford, although she's far more eloquent than I. So indulge me, please. I really just want to say that we need you. We need you to advocate for your needs. We need you to tell us what you need. And I also think we need for folks to recognize how their concerns and priorities are shared by other very specific groups and how we need you to connect to those other groups. So for example, one of the things I was thinking about in thinking about coming today and talking is not just how your experience helps to shape your expertise and your own set of priorities, but how we need your expertise to inform the work of other people who are working on similar issues. So for example, I'm just going to name off some of the areas that I see this intersectionality with senior priorities and senior concerns, but also to give you a sense of what I mean about having your work inform theirs. So whether it's disability rights, children with special health care needs who rely on home health aides, tech equity and tech justice, not just around literacy, around how to use computers, but making sure that people have access to technology, whether that's broadband or the equipment, access to healthcare, access to prescriptions, food security, what Dr. Romney mentioned, economic security, caregivers, mental health services, transportation justice, which I know is huge in our community. And also probably the most important piece, which is really sort of addressing this potential for loneliness and cutting through the isolation, which to me is really about making sure that we see people, that we acknowledge their experience, that we bring them into our experience, and that we make sure that policy is based on what we're hearing. You know, I remember the words of, this is going to sound, I hope this doesn't sound like it's not relevant, but I do, in thinking about today, I was really recalling the words to John Prine's song, Hello in There. I don't know if people are familiar with that song. Maybe people could hit the hands up if you're familiar with it. Great, hi Sonia. But I come to really think about that, the lyrics to that song. And when I first heard that song, actually, I was young and I heard Bette Midler perform it, and she performs it, if you haven't heard it, extremely theatrically and dramatically and beautifully. And I remember thinking, yeah, that's what it's really, that's the whole piece, is making sure that we see people. And I have to say, there are a lot of lessons to COVID, but this is the big one, that we should always learn it and relearn it over and over again, is really seeing people, acknowledging their experience, sharing their loss, and then working together or letting them lead and we follow and are there to sort of like, you know, sort of spot them in case they fall, around making sure that they get to be able to get their needs met. And I really do believe that this is a big part of Amherst Neighbors' work, through whether it's, you know, helping people with gardening or shoveling the walk, some of the pictures that we saw earlier, coming together to learn painting, to learn a new skill, to just share a story. It's really about seeing people. But I want you to know that it's not just about seeing each other, it's also amplifying that vision and sharing that vision with these other groups who are also advocating for similar issues. We need to build a bigger mousetrap. We need to make sure that senior issues are everyone's issues. There's an organization that in my family we really love. It's called the Little Lobbyists. And if you're on Twitter, you can follow them, or Facebook. And they are really a family-led organization of parents who are advocating for their children's special health care needs. And you may remember there were demonstrations in the Capitol where kids in wheelchairs were being pushed by their parents to fight for affordable care. And this is the group that organized that. And I really see this connection between groups that are fighting for senior issues and groups that are fighting for kids with special health care needs, because they're both issues, whether it's economic, healthcare related, isolation, being inclusive, being included in community. They're issues that sort of cross those generations. So not only do I really appreciate the intergenerational kind of programming that Amherst Neighbors has, but I hope that I'm happy to partner and support and help do this in any way that I can. Think of the intergenerational ways to advocate, that issues are not just one group's versus another. How do we build those connections? So I just want to take a moment and share some of the lessons from COVID that we're still learning, that maybe also have particular resonance for seniors in our community. And this is definitely, the first one is definitely one that we should have already learned, but we relearn it all the time. It's a twofer, and that's that we have to meet people where they're at, and the people who are most affected by something have to be at the table talking to us about it. And I think we saw, and I can get a little bit political now, right? Because I'm an elected official, I can do that. I think we saw that what happens when we don't do that is that policy and programs fail. And we saw that with the vaccine rollout. So I just want to take us back there for a moment, if I may. It didn't really take rocket scientists to tell us that if the first group that was going to be identified for vaccines was 75 plus because of their particular vulnerability, that first of all, they should have been at the table telling us how to do the rollout. But secondly, relying on a completely online version of doing that was English-based, technology-based, and broadband-based was not going to really be successful. And in fact, was probably going to undermine our efforts to reach that very vulnerable population. So that was like one of the first lessons in the vaccine rollout was, why aren't the people that are most impacted at the table telling us how to do this? And we should have already learned that. We should have learned that repeatedly, like every year we should know that. It's just a respect piece, but we should have learned it through the HIV epidemic. We should have learned it through a whole host of health issues and other kinds of issues that we deal with. But we relearned it with COVID. Seniors and others directly impacted need to be at the table telling us what they need, what their barriers are, what their challenges are, so that from the get-go, we can address that to make it a smooth transition and smooth implementation so that people don't face additional challenges in a program that's supposed to remove those barriers. Hopefully we've learned that. I think that the Baker administration was beginning to learn that when they rolled out the vaccine program that went to people's homes. That was a great piece, right? Because it also recognized that a lot of people can't get to their local health department or to where the vaccine was, and we have to go to them. So hopefully we're on the right track there. But we also learned something else. And the Amherst Survival Center, I think, really learned this, as well as other food pantries across the state, is that our emergency food network is extremely dependent on seniors to make it work. Senior volunteers actually make pantries in the Commonwealth operational before the pandemic. If it wasn't for senior volunteers before the pandemic, we would not have been able to distribute as much food as we had. And what we learned was, as soon as the pandemic's restrictions came in, a lot of these pantries across the state were really hamstrung by the lack of a workforce because they were so reliant on senior volunteers. That tells me a lot of different things, including the enormous heart that seniors have, and so many times when I was at the Survival Center, I met people who said that, who were volunteering there and told me that volunteering at the Survival Center was on their bucket list for when they retired. And I thought, really? Not going on a safari in Africa, but volunteering at the reception desk at the Amherst Survival Center? But that's what they wanted. They wanted to connect. They wanted to benefit. They wanted to give back to their community. And so at the legislative level, we had to recognize that we needed to provide more resources to pantries to pay people to hire the staff that they were already relying on volunteers to be able to provide. And thankfully, organizations like the Amherst Survival Center, like Not Bread Alone, the First Baptist Church Food Pantry, the Amherst and the Pelham Senior Centers, they all pivoted during the pandemic and really in extraordinary ways, not only continued to deliver food without interruption, but expanded their capacity. And so you've got the Survival Center now doing food delivery on a regular basis for many people in our areas. So I think I'll stop at that point in case there are any questions, but I really just want to thank you again for all your, it's not really work for you, right? It's what you're doing to be able to make our community a stronger and a better place. And I just want to encourage you, please continue. We need you as not just advocates in the sense of something different from what you're doing. We need you to tell us what you need and what we can do to be supportive. We won't know unless you tell us, or unless you invite us to meetings where we can listen. And I want you to know that also is a form of advocacy and lobbying, so that when I'm in a meeting hearing what people are saying is some of their challenges or barriers or their wishes, what's on their wish list, that helps me sort of craft my work going forward, whether that's trying to get a budget amendment passed for a particular sort of activity that has been mentioned as something that people want, or going and seeking out legislative solutions. So please, we need you. Please make sure that advocacy is part of the things that the Amherst neighbors continue to do, because that way we'll still stay involved, but also our work will be better for your experience and expertise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mindy. Linda, do we have some questions for Mindy?
No, just that I feel so energized and inspired.
Yeah.
And so grateful for the leadership that we have, representing both of you and all the voices that spoke today. It just, it makes me feel like I'm ready for the next round. I am ready to go again, and we want to, work with you so directly. Thank you. And let me tell you a little bit, this is to a couple of folks who have written in and asked for your emails. And we have, the way the chat is set up today, everything comes to me individually, so it's not visible to everybody. And so we will send you via email the contact information, but I'm sorry that the way it's set up, I can't send it to you directly. Okay. I don't see it. I see lots of thank yous and appreciation and applause, and I don't see a question right now.
All right. Well, I would just like to make a comment, Mindy. I just so appreciate this. The word intersectionality is just, it's showing up in so many places, and I'm so appreciative that you're focusing on how things are interconnected. And I think human beings historically, for a variety of reasons, we've really much so compartmentalized issues and events, and the fact that this is now becoming this weaving of different groups of people and different people's needs, and it is just, it's a beautiful thing to see. And similar, I think of you and Joe as like the dynamic duo. I feel like you both have you come from such heart, and you have such a desire to make a difference, and you are every day. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much. That's a beautiful, and I have to tell you, I could not have a better partner in the Senate than Joe Comerford. So, and we
love
could have
the
a better
duo. Min, that's what we have to do now. We're emboldened by all of you. We're strengthened by all of
Love
you.
it.
It's perfect.
Yeah. All right. Well, what we are basically coming to almost to the end of our official event today, and then we'll have some time for some questions and answers specifically for Amherst neighbors. But what I do want to say is I want to let you all know how you can get involved. I hope you will all get involved with us. If you're not already a member with us, please become a member. Come join us. You can join a committee. We have a number of wonderful committees to be a part of, including services and programs and fundraising and governance and finance. So come and join a committee, join our board, become a volunteer. And if at all possible, do please make a donation to Amherst Neighbors. We are a member-led, no-fee village, meaning we are part of the Village to Village network. And many villages across there's about 350 villages that exist across this country and internationally. And many of them charge fees. And we do not. And we did that very specifically from the beginning. We did not want to charge a fee because we wanted all people of Amherst and Pelham to be able to come and participate with us and not have money be a barrier to that. But we are an organization, we have bills to pay, and you all know how that works. And we hired this amazing person, administrative assistant, and we're going to need to pay her salary. So please, if you can give to Amherst Neighbors, we would be so grateful. Let's see. We should have, I believe we were going to drop in the chat the link to donate. So if you click in the chat, you should be able to just click the donate link. It'll go right to our website donation page. And you can do that. There are other ways. If you want to send a check, you can certainly do that as well. If you go to amherstneighbors.org, you can find all that contact information. Somebody could also put our contact information in the chat. That would be awesome. So just what's coming up for us, we have our next Zoom program is going to be a collaboration between Amherst Neighbors, the Northeast Death Care Collaborative, and Village Neighbors, and that is happening this Thursday, November 4th via Zoom at 4 p.m. to 5:30. And it will focus on new practices and options in after-death care, home funerals, natural green burial, and even composting. No question is too bold and no topic is taboo. Apparently it is hosted by Dina Stander, a local end-of-life educator, and she will also have other local experts helping her as well. And talk about coming full circle. I think it's, we've been talking about living well in community, and we can also be dying well in community. So that being said, I would love to open up the floor to anyone who may have some questions for us. I alone do not wish to answer the questions because I probably won't have all the answers, but we have a number of board members and committee members on the call today who may be able to. So Linda Terry, do you want to do it in the chat, or do you just want to open up live questions?
Why don't we try live questions? It may be a little bit difficult to kind of recognize raised hands, but let's give it a try.
Okie dokie. Anybody have a question for us?
Answer your people directly.
Yeah. Anybody? I don't think I'm able. Well,
Larry, is it Larry Stein?
Yeah, I had a question for Joe Comerford, to just, if possible, to give a little bit, maybe just a smidgen more on the essence of the end of life bill. Like what's the intent or meat of that? What's the goal there?
Absolutely. Is it okay, Linda, if I do that?
Sure.
Absolutely. So the End of Life Options Act is really supported by a very growing, very diverse cohort of advocacy-based organizations, individuals, a lot here in Western Massachusetts. As Mindy knows, when we were running for the first time in 2018, there was a really huge push for us to understand that as legislators. So the idea behind this bill is that if someone receives a terminal diagnosis of fewer than 6 months or fewer, again, a terminal diagnosis by a physician that is seconded by another physician, and they have to go through many, many steps after that, including a mental wellness check. Their physician or another physician could prescribe medication that they would use themselves to end their life. And this comes from advocates who have been faced with diagnoses that are significantly painful, significantly debilitating, ends that they don't wish to have. And they want to be able to have choice at the end of their life. And I will say that again, I'm filed it for the first time this session. Will Brownsberger, who's the Senator Pro Tem, had it last session, but it was in my Public Health Committee. And we had a fellow, this beautiful young guy from Harvard Public Health, named Tyler, who spent the entire summer listening about this one piece of legislation, mostly listening to advocates from the disability rights community that, you know, said to us basically, hey, look, we want to live well. And now you're talking about having us end our lives. Like you have to do a better job making, you know, the Commonwealth a place where we can live with dignity. And that was an incredibly important testimony that we received, really just so much. So we put in a number of protections in the bill that were grounded, or guardrails grounded in the counsel that came especially from the disability rights community. We passed it out of committee for the first time last session, the first time in the bill's history. And it wasn't the time to go forward, right? With so many people falling prey to COVID. It was not that we were trying to do everything we could to keep people healthy. It was not the time to pass this bill. But we continue to have this conversation. It's again in public health. We had a hearing. We received testimony from some of you in support who are on the call right now. And, you know, we continue to have this conversation as a legislature about it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Debbie has her hand up.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to know if that November 4th event is going to be recorded for those of us who work till 5 and can't make it at 4 o'clock. Can you hear me? Somebody's dog.
I would think that, yeah. Someone on the programs committee, can you let us know, is that going to be recorded?
Yes.
And how would we get a copy of it, or do you just send these things out to everyone who's a member automatically?
We will end up getting the link onto the website.
Oh, great. Thank you. This is great. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Amherst neighbors or comments, feedback for anything you might want to contribute?
Will this be available, the recording,
This particular event?
the whole event?
Yes, it will. And it is also something that we hope to get up on, well, we will get up on the website. All right. I personally, I cannot see hands or anything. So does anybody else see any hands? Linda Terry, is there anyone else having any questions or?
There's, yeah, I've been checking. I don't.
Okay.
See them.
All right. Well, then I think that we will come to the close of this event. We do get to have the Amherst Area Gospel Choir sing us out, I believe. I want to just say thank you one more time. Oh, before I forget, I realized that there were I saw a couple of names on our participants list that were there at the beginning with us at around that kitchen table, including John Kent and Audrey Child. And so I just want to acknowledge you both, and I'm sure there are other people that I have forgotten to thank and acknowledge, and I do apologize. And it does take a village, right? So thank you all again for being here today. I hope to see all of your faces somewhere as a member on a program. Just come, please come and join us. And thank you again to all of our fantastic speakers today, Dr. Pat Romney, Joe Comerford, Senator Joe Comerford, and State Rep Mindy Dom.
You all. Thank you all.
All right. Do we have the gospel choir coming?
Jacqueline.
I think it's coming. And thank you again to Alexandra and Ben of Cost from UMass. All right. Thank you again. Have a lovely afternoon. Be well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks to all of you.
To you.
And thanks to the choir.